Greetings and welcome to this brief presentation explaining how EPX BuyerWall-based payment processing services take a different, more secure approach to protecting payment data. Rather than following the traditional payment processing approach that involves a complex arrangement of disparate third-party vendors to facilitate the payment flow, payment processing services from Electronic Payment Exchange, EPX, eliminate unnecessary vendor relationships, contracts, expenses, and the risks associated with traditional payment processing service providers. Using a brick-and-mortar point-of-sale environment as an example, the traditional method of credit card processing typically begins with a customer approaching a cashier to begin the checkout process. Using barcode scanning technology or manual entry, the cashier enters the transaction details and sales amount into a point-of-sale terminal. Assuming the customer wishes to pay for the items with a credit or debit card, the cashier then swipes the card or manually enters the payment data into the system. At this point of card swipe or manual entry of card data, the processing cycle begins. The card data is stored in the merchant's system, unsecured in many cases, and then is potentially handed off to various third parties, including front-end gateway systems and providers, back-end payment processors, and the card networks, such as Visa, MasterCard, and Discover. At each stop along the way, payment data is handed off and is stored in the multiple systems and with multiple service providers. Assuming the affected card network approves the transaction, it sends transaction data and receipt information back to the back-end processor, which then passes the transaction data and receipt information to the front-end gateway. The data and receipt information are then returned to the merchant's point-of-sale terminal, and a sales receipt is handed to the customer, sometimes with credit card information printed on it. As we just illustrated, the confidential and risky credit card information is vulnerable and subject to theft multiple times throughout the traditional payment processing method. With EPX BuyerWall-based payment processing solutions, EPX combines the functionality of the ISO, merchant acquirer, gateway, front-end processor, and back-end processor under one roof, with one contract and one point of responsibility for payments. This straight-through processing approach not only eliminates the operational complexities of multiple vendors, it also reduces much of the redundant costs and unnecessary risk involved in having each transaction's sensitive information spread across multiple third parties. Again, using a brick-and-mortar point-of-sale scenario, the transaction begins with a customer approaching a cashier to begin the checkout process. The cashier enters the transaction details and sales amount into the point-of-sale terminal and swipes the card or manually enters the payment data into the system. Now here is where EPX BuyerWall-based processing differs from the outdated, risky methods used by traditional payment processors. EPX essentially puts a wall between the merchant and the customer's payment data and enables the credit card data to totally bypass the merchant's system. Rather than the credit card data being handed off to multiple third parties, it goes directly through an encryption process at the point of sale and is then sent directly to EPX, who replaces all of the third-party organizations needed in the world of traditional payment processing. The card data passes through the BuyerWall platform to the card networks for authorization and is securely locked away in EPX's data vault. At this point, EPX BuyerWall employs tokenization technology to create a BuyerWall-recognized identification code, or BRIC, that is returned to the merchant's system and is printed on the customer's receipt. The BRIC is undecipherable and cannot be reverse engineered to expose the actual credit card information. The merchant stores the BRIC, which can be used for future transactions, returns, and other customer experience needs. EPX BuyerWall-based payment processing solutions enable organizations to securely outsource online payment acceptance and virtually all PCI compliance requirements. Customers seamlessly use EPX payment solutions, which alleviate merchants' concerns associated with transmitting, processing, and storing account numbers and other sensitive cardholder data. With EPX providing the means for sensitive cardholder data to bypass merchants' systems and databases, the scope of PCI compliance is significantly reduced for those merchants. For more information about Electronic Payment Exchange and our EPX BuyerWall-based payment processing services, go to www.epx.com.